What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, we are here to do another versus video. Oh, that's right. Yes, we are back to this series that I kind of forgot we had. And this is the versus series where we take two players and compare them to each other. Usually it's players. I don't think we've done anything aside from players. We've done it with the draft. We did like one video with the draft. I think we did Quiddy Pay against Gregory Russo. But today we're back with another versus video. See, my initial plan today was just to do one of the players and just talk about the player the Lions added. But then I was like, hold up, wait a minute. These players are very similar, so I was going to do two videos. Then I was like, why don't I just put it in the same video? We compare both players, we learn about both players, and I talk about what I think each running back does better than the other. What one running back is good at, the other one's not so good at, because they have very similar builds, a very similar play style, and it could come down to only one of these guys getting to make the team. Now, there's a chance that neither of them make the team as well if other moves happen between now and the season for sure, but I think one of them definitely could. I just don't see both of them making it. Today, we're talking about two running backs the Lions added this offseason. One they signed as UDFA, the other they picked up as a free agent last season. Well, the year before, he was a UDFA. Today, we're talking about Dedrick Mills. I want to hop in here and say that through this video, I say Dedrick Mills. I didn't realize it was pronounced Dedrick Mills until I was watching a different clip, because I don't watch the highlights and I don't have the sound on. I just watched the film, so I was like, okay, all right. Do my thing. I pull up a clip and all of a sudden dude says Dedrick Mills. I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. It's Dedrick. I did the whole video. So I'm sorry. I say Dedrick. I'm sorry. I mean Dedrick. And Michael Warren II. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to the video. Glad you guys are here, and I'm excited for this. I kind of forgot we had this series, but I'm excited to bring it back. Now, before we get this video started, I do want to address a question, because I just want to make sure that everybody's aware. I have had a question about making sure I have subtitles on my videos, so I can't really add subtitles myself. I mean, I guess I can't really type out every word. It'd be awful, but YouTube does have subtitles. It's in their closed captions. I found it as the CC button. I don't know if it's on every video, but I'm going to check when I upload this to make sure and see if I can figure out how to put that on. But it should be there. If it's not, maybe YouTube takes a little bit to process it, but I'll try to figure it out. It should be a CC button. Click that and that should pull up the subtitles, okay? Just for anybody out there that is wondering. But today, man, I'm excited to be back with this versus series, another one of these videos. And I think this is a great one, because I think we can see only one of these players make team. They're very similar in terms of their play style. They were both brought in this offseason. Neither of them was drafted. One was signed. They both were UDFAs. I mean, this is going to be awesome. Today, we're talking about Dedrick Mills versus Michael Warren, the running back out of Nebraska and the running back out of Cincinnati. Now, I want to give a quick little background on each of these running backs. That way, you know just a little bit about them. I mean, I'm not going to dive into it like crazy, because we do have 2 running backs to cover. But we're going to do it and kind of set it up pretty well. So we'll give a little background on both running backs, and then we'll compare them straight up, directly compare both of these guys in terms of blocking, pass catching, like that. Go down the list, and I'll tell you which one I like better. But I'm going to explain both sides for each player, and that will be the comparison for these two guys. And you can comment down below who you like better after this video, or if you already know who you like better, then you can comment that now. But you should wait. Let me tell you what I'm thinking, okay? Man, let's just dive right into this. Do a quick little background on Dedrick Mills' path to landing with the Detroit Lions, because it's definitely an interesting one. It had some ups, it had some downs. So let's get into it very quickly, and then we'll talk about Michael Warren. So Dedrick Mills started with the Georgia Tech coming out of high school, and he really came onto the scene pretty quickly. 771 rushing yards on 5.1 yards per carry in 9 games played for 12 touchdowns in his first season. That's very impressive. As you can see, was not super involved in the passing game there, but very impressive start to his collegiate career. However, things would then take a pretty big fall, sort of. So he actually ended up getting kicked out of Georgia Tech because of some failed drug tests. What's important about those Georgia Tech stats is that he did that in 9 games. I believe he was suspended for 2 games that season, but in 9 games put up 771. That's a big deal. That means maybe if he played in every game, maybe he could have hit 1,000 yards that season. It's possible. And he finished with a bang. He played well in his bowl game, and he's like, hey, I want to get better. So he did some things in the offseason to get better, but when his coach ultimately told him that, you're off the team, I mean, it hurt him. And I could see why that would hurt him, right? That's a really tough thing to go through. Apparently, Dedrick Mills was like, hey, I want to give up. But, you know, his mom was like, no, you can't give up. You've made it too far. Headed off to community college. He went to Garden City Community College. They gave him an opportunity. If you're wondering why he chose to go to community college and not just, you know, go to a different college after being kicked out, it's because he couldn't. I guess you would have to take a year off from the NCAA, so he decided to go to community college. That way he didn't have to take that year off. But at that point, he's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it back up. You know, am I ever going to be able to get back up? And side note, his coach in community college, I believe, had 4 All-American running backs. And he said, look, he's up there with all those. He's the next level runner. Very tough to make it into the NFL out of community college. But that's exactly what he did. He was ranked the #1 JUCO running back. He had an opportunity to get back to Division I, and that's what he's tried to do. So he went to transfer back to Nebraska for Division I, but sort of some issues there. He actually had to get his GPA up. So he spent 2 seasons at community college, but he had to get his GPA up because it was below a 2.5, and you need that to transfer from community college to Division I, which was Nebraska. But he ultimately did get back to Nebraska. In 2019, his first season there, in 12 games played, it was a full season. He had a good year. 5.2 yards per carry, 745 yards, 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's a really good first season in the Big Ten. I mean, that's a very big transition as well. And he got a little bit more involved in the passing game with the 15 receptions. But 2020 really didn't go great because 2020 he dealt with some injuries that he said he never fully recovered from. So it's specifically a knee injury that he dealt with in 2020. A little bit concerning. Hopefully he gets that better. But he was dealing with a knee injury in 2020 and he missed a couple of games, but something that he dealt with throughout the season. And the last game of the season is really where he took off. He only had 396 yards with 4.7 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns, but it was the last game where he had 190 of those yards, and that was against Rutgers. Now, Rutgers is not a great team, but he reportedly told his coach, hey, just give me the ball. You know, let me basically take advantage of the inside of this defense. Now, he likes inside zone rushing scheme. That's what he prefers. So obviously that's a scheme fit for the Detroit Lions to have an inside zone runner that can just power it forward. So there is a scheme fit here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. His knee injury was bothering him, but they basically taped it in a way that he didn't really feel it. But he's like, sometimes you have to play through pain, that he had a lot of pain build up inside. And for him, football was his outlet. And that's the way that he plays on the field, which makes him kind of that power type of short yardage back, because that's exactly how he plays. He said, I want to hurt people. Let me hop in very quickly and correct myself. He didn't say I want to hurt people. Okay, that sounds messed up. That's my bad. Okay, I said it wrong. He says, I like to cause pain. Okay, now it doesn't sound a lot better, but basically that was his running style. He liked to cause pain in defenders. That's how he plays. So that kind of sums up who he is as a running back, right? That's what you're getting. You're getting a guy for short yard situations that likes to cause pain. His pro day, his numbers don't look great when you first take a glance at it, but there are some things to explain here. First off, that 40 time, it's listed as a 4.65. Remember, it's unofficial. Some others labeled it as a 4.58, which would be pretty good considering his size. Mill says he really couldn't care less about any of the other things that he was trying to do at the combine because he knew that it was all about the speed. It was about that 40 time, and he had to post a good 40 time because people were concerned about that, you know, second level speed. And I think he put out a pretty solid score if you give him that 5.48 score. It's tough when it's unofficial to do that, but he understood, you know, what people thought of him. People thought of him as power back, so they thought that he lacked that top end speed. And he's like, hey, I got to make there. That's a good number. He checked in at 5'9.5", 217 pounds, so you could tell that he's pretty well built there. He'd be bigger than every running back that we currently have on the roster, aside from Michael Warren, who we'll get to in a second. But I like the height. I love the 5'9.5" lower to the ground. I really like that, especially for a power back. Now, the bench press reps were a little bit underwhelming, considering it was only 16 for a power back. You'd like that to be more, but he was really trying to go out and just show scouts the things that they didn't really think that he could do really at a high level. And that was, he wanted to show them that he had more speed. He said that he was working on his technique. He said, I didn't really realize there was technique in terms of this speed stuff. For him, that's not something he does. He doesn't really have that background of doing that. So it's something that he said he's been improving on, and some unofficial times gave him a 4.58, and that would be pretty good if you gave him that score. But 4.58 to 4.65, I think would be the range for him. Now, his agility scores weren't terrible, but like I said, overall his speed scores, they just weren't that great. The bench press was kind of underwhelming. So overall, though, I don't think it was a bad day because the numbers don't look fantastic, but he also showed off scouts that he could catch the football. He looked really good in catching drills, and he also ran some good routes. So I think the things that he did actually at the drills maybe were more important than some of the numbers that he actually ended up posting. But like I said, then he signed with the Detroit Lions as UDFA out of Nebraska, and here we are. But let's do a quick little background then on Michael Warren as well. Now, Michael Warren, a little bit different. He's been in the league for a season. He spent last year in the NFL with multiple teams, but coming coming out of the draft, he spent 3 years with Cincinnati, 2017 through 2019. In 2017, he was behind Mike Boone and some other running backs. He was actually labeled as the number 4 running back, but statistically, he still averaged 6 yards a carry for 324 and a touchdown. I mean, if he's the 4th running back and those are his numbers, okay, like, we'll take those numbers for our 4th running back next season. I'll take that all day long. So, yeah, great stats considering how deep he was on the depth chart. Like I said, Mike Boone was up there, and Mike Boone, as we know, has done some big things with the Vikings. Now, Mike Boone had a hotter start to his career and a kind of a colder finish. But regardless, once Mike Boone left, he got, the door open a little bit, and he worked his way all the way up to the top of basically being the bell cow for Cincinnati. He was like, you're the guy, you're going to get the carries, we're going to let you do your thing. And that's exactly what he did. In 2018, he just went off. 12 games played, 5.4 yards to carry, 1,300 rushing yards, and 19 touchdowns, 25 receptions for 232 yards. So we got involved everywhere. I mean, it wasn't like he was a dominant pass-catching threat, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we start comparing these guys, but definitely got involved in everywhere. 2019, his final season, he averaged 4.8 yards per carry for 1,265 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 21 receptions for 153 yards. So statistically really good. 2018, 2019, they had a 22-5 record. Before that, Cincinnati was really struggling. When he took over as the guy in the backfield, I'm not saying it was just him, but let's just say they had a lot more success, and they've been successful since then. Of course, they have Desmond Ridder, which helps out a lot as well, but he was known as the soul of that team. Overall, for Michael Warren, it was a pretty well-decorated college experience. He was a top 30 running back coming out of high school. By the consensus, a 3-star running back. In high school, he averaged 8.95 yards per carry. Okay, 8.95 yards. I know it's high school, but dang, that just sounds like a lot. You're basically averaging a first down every time you get the ball. It's kind of crazy. In 2018, he had 7 straight 100-yard rushing games, which was the first running back to do that since 1998 in their program's history. And then in 2019, his final season at Cincinnati, he had 7 more games with 100-plus yards rushing. Plus, in his final 7 games at Cincinnati, he averaged 109 yards per game and also 5.7 yards per carry. So that's finishing with a bang. But he wasn't extremely electric coming out of the draft, and for him playing in the conference that he did play against, he had the numbers, but he still ended up going undrafted. So for him, even staying an extra year probably wouldn't have led to anything higher. If anything, he's just risking an injury or something like that. So he goes undrafted. He's signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, his pro day, or I should say combine at that time, he really doesn't have combine numbers. The only number that he does have is the bench press reps, where he has 16. Aside from that, he has no numbers. So same bench press reps as Dedrick Mills. What I said was a little underwhelming for him, it would be underwhelming for Michael Warren as well. He measured out at 5'9", 226. So much bigger. That'd be bigger than Todd Gurley. So definitely some big size there. Okay, that's a big dude. And actually, now he's labeled at 222. So he might have lost a little bit of weight since then, but we haven't seen him since then. So I can only look at film from 2019, but he could look like a completely different player. But regardless, he didn't have numbers here because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. So we didn't get to see him. So both these guys have had injuries in the past. It's football. That's what you come to expect. But then he landed with the Philadelphia Eagles coming out of the draft as a UDFA. It didn't last extremely long, but let me just say this guy's nickname is the Truck. So I guess you kind of know what kind of running backs you're getting here. It kind of just tells you based on those statements alone. But he signs with the Eagles, didn't last extremely long, wasn't there super long. He was placed on the practice squad, and then a few days later, he would be released, and I believe that took place, yes, on September 29th. He was then later picked up by the Carolina Panthers, and the Panthers only picked him up for 2 days, and then they would release him. And then finally, he would finish his 2020 season with the Washington football team. And with Washington, he would spend about a month with Washington. It's about 2 months after Carolina releasing him. He was actually added to the active roster from the practice squad for 1 week against Seattle because they had injuries. I don't know if Antonio Gibson was hurt or he was the only healthy running back. Regardless, he didn't play in that game, but he was brought up to the active roster. After that week, they put him back down the practice squad, would then release him for the remainder of the season. And then you head forward to this season, then picked back up by the Washington football team. They signed him to a futures contract, so they must have liked something, but then they ultimately released him again on April 9th. I compare Dedrick Mills and Michael Warren. Now, I've done this based on film, I've done it based on numbers, and I put together some categories. We're going to be taking a look at blocking to talk about who is the better blocker, both pass protection and as a run blocker as well. Yes, sometimes your running back has to do that. We're also going to be talking about pass catching. All right, can he catch the ball? Can he route run? We're also going to be comparing, obviously, how well they rush the football. A couple of categories going to break this down too. It's really no exact science, but it is just for fun, just to kind of learn about both guys at the same time. time because why not? Why would you not want to do that? So let's do it. Let's start off with the blocking first. We're going to start off with the categories that aren't just rushing the football first, and then we'll get into rushing the football. So as a blocker, now there's two categories to this. There's pass blocking and there's run blocking, but usually as a running back, you don't hear about run blocking unless your name is Dedrick Mills, because he was asked to run block a lot. Yeah, Dedrick Mills is an interesting guy because not only would he block from the running back position and block for his quarterback, but also he would block from the fullback position. They put him at that spot. They put a different guy in the backfield. He usually was like a receiver or a smaller running back, and he would lead the way. So yes, Dedrick Mills has played a couple of different roles. That versatility is pretty cool. Also, when you consider the fact that the Lions could be playing some pistol, could be looking for an H-back, he could give you some of that versatility as well because he has the background of doing that. Dedrick Mills, I definitely have to give him the edge in terms of blocking as a pass protector, but also as a run blocker. His ability to be a lead blocker, a run blocker, but also as a pass protector. First off, the guy's aggressive, he's nasty, he's angry. That same approach that he wants to run over you, he wants to run over you in pass protection too. He's usually right on where he needs to go. He picks up blitzes at extremely high level, but also what I love, my favorite part, is that he has an ability to stay connected. I mean, it's awesome. The guy stays connected at a high level. He blocks like an offensive lineman or a tight end would. There's technique there. It's very sound. He's a very reliable blocker. Now, for him, he didn't get tons of reps on obvious passing downs because, unfortunately, he wasn't used as much of a receiving threat. But when they did drop back to pass and he was on the field and he was asked to block, the guy blocks at a high level. And also, just that ability to be a lead blocker, push the quarterback from behind, line up as a fullback. I mean, those are like little things that are very impressive. Now, when it comes to Michael Warren, this isn't to say he's a bad blocker. He hasn't done the kind of lead blocking thing like I've seen Dedrick Mills do, so I don't really know exactly the run blocking side there, so I just by default have to give it to Mills. But as a pass blocker, he's been a little bit more inconsistent. I would say his biggest issue, I think we've talked about it before, is staying connected. He also brings some power, but you could just see technically, he just kind of puts his shoulder into guys and moves on. And he does bring a lot of power. He can move you off your feet. He'll take on the big defensive lineman, but from time to time, they'll get by him because he only hits him or he'll whiff, and then they go right past him, and he doesn't really stay connected throughout the play. So for him, he might give you that initial shock or that initial hit, but he usually doesn't stick with guys extremely well consistently. So for him, it's about staying connected. That's the part of his game that he's going to have to develop. There is absolutely upside here because both of them have really good power. He's usually in the right spot. He just doesn't stay connected that well. But there's upside for Michael Warren to be a better blocker. But at this stage, Dedrick Mills, to me, gets the nod in both categories. And then you talk about pass catching. Now, I want to break this down into two things. Not only catching the football, but also route running. And this is kind of a weird one because neither of them were huge pass receiving threats, but based on the production alone, you would say you'd have to give it to a guy like Michael Warren, and I slightly will give this edge to Michael Warren. So Michael Warren has the production because he was the guy, and they put him out there on every down. So it didn't really matter. But for Dedrick Mills, on obvious passing downs, usually he came off the field. Could he block? Yes. So when they passed on early downs, it was perfect. But on obvious pass downs, they kind of just took him off the field. For the most part, he just didn't get a ton of reps in terms of pass catching. What really is the only thing that I think that he's missing here is maybe getting the opportunities. When you look at a guy like Michael Warren, he had the opportunities. He had 0 drops last season. The issue for Michael Warren is that when you talk about route tree, so pass catching goes to Warren, but route tree, so there definitely could be more in store as a potential route runner for Dedrick Mills from what I've heard and the rare occasions I've seen him line up like a receiver, but he just hasn't really had that production and those opportunities. I'd probably have to just give this to Michael Warren by default. However, yards after the catch, I think Michael Warren would strongly get this because I think his ability in space to make people miss is a little bit better than Dedrick Mills, and we'll get back to that when we start to talk about rushing. So I would probably give that category to Michael Warren as a whole, but route running is kind of up in the air because Michael Warren seems very limited there, but Dedrick Mills could have more in store. So I guess you could give that to Dedrick Mills if you wanted to. Talk about what you guys want to hear. This is what you came here for. Happy Meals. Happy Meals? Really? That's what I came up with? You guys came here because you want to hear about who is the better running back, who runs the ball better. And we're going to break this down to a lot of carries. Let's have some fun with this one, okay? Rushing the football is tough. They're very close on a lot of things because as I explained at the beginning, they're so similar. And you're going to see that as we go through this. Let's start off with a very important part, and this is ball security. Can you hold on to the dang football? It's very important. Now, one thing I do like is Lions have Deuce Staley, and Staley understands how to make the running backs hold on to the football. When they struggle, he makes them better. He understands the 4 pressure points, he called it. He will help these guys a ton if they have fumbling issues. So that's awesome to hear. He can help all of our guys rushing the football. That would be great. But in terms of ball security, who am I giving the edge here to? Well, they both had their struggles in the past, and they've also both shown signs of improvement. Starting off with Dedrick Mills first, Mills actually went through a stretch for a whole week he held onto a football. He said you can try to hit it, anybody can try to hit it. It ain't going nowhere. One game during his Nebraska career, he had a fumble, and it was a very big fumble. It happened in one of their losses. And after that, they had him hold the football for a whole week. So he would walk around with the football wherever he went. And I think that's cool. That's like something that you see in movies, but he did that. 2020, the guy had 3 fumbles. Now, those came in 4 games. He improved aside from that, but like I said, the first 4 games, he had 3 fumbles. In 2019, he had 3 fumbles. 2016, he had 3 fumbles. So fumbles have always been something that showed up, even though he hasn't had tons of carries. Good amount, but not tons. So I'm going to have to give this edge to Michael Warren. Now, Michael Warren had his struggles. In 2019, he had 5 fumbles, but in 2020, he had 0. For Michael Warren, in 2018, he had 5 fumbles. But in 2019, he came back strong, and he only had 0 fumbles, even though one was close. He lost it, but it ended up being ruled down. Regardless, though, he protected the football much better, and you could see it. He really ran with 2 arms on the football. Now, Dedrick Mills did the same thing, and he actually said this himself. It's not about keeping 2 hands on the ball. I do that. But for me, when I'm falling to the ground, I have a tendency to try to catch myself. You don't want to do that because you get injured. I guess that's when people have the opportunity to knock it loose, because you take a hand off the ball, you're going to fall, things get out, and you knock it out of his hands. So that's one area that he'll have to prove upon, is sticking with it throughout the play. And he has shown improvements, I think, since, holding on to a football for a week. But I have to give this edge to Michael Warren, because in 2019, he didn't even fumble 1 time. So I think that's a big deal. But obviously 5 is very concerning, but he was getting a lot of carries. He was the bell cow. So this nod does go to Michael Warren as well. Then you move on to speed. Who has more acceleration? We're talking that 0 to 60 speed. It's get the ball and get up to speed as fast as you can. Not top end. It's how quick can you get there. And this edge, to me, has to go to Dedrick Mills. Now, neither of these guys are extremely explosive, I would say, and neither of them have great acceleration. However, Dedrick Mills definitely has more, and I actually think it's a very underrated part of his game. He can get to his second level pretty quickly, and he can get to his top speed pretty quickly. Now, his top speed does waver a little bit, but as I mentioned, I think he gets up to speed at a pretty good level considering his size. He's shown glimpses of being able to get around the edge, get to the outside. I mean, it's nothing crazy. He's no faster than a guy like DeAndre Swift, nothing like that. But in comparison to a guy like Michael Warren, he's shown more to me in terms of that acceleration, able to get the speed, able to get the second level quicker. He can hit that hole a lot quicker, a lot faster than a guy like Michael Warren has been able to. So I'm going to give the acceleration edge to a guy like Dedrick Mills. He had that 1.63 second 10-year split. It wasn't great. Now, for a guy like Michael Warren, we don't have the numbers on this. Like I said, he didn't do this because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. But I think from the film alone, it just doesn't seem like he has that great acceleration. To me, I think actually one of his biggest issues is stop and start. When he's at a complete stop trying to get up to speed, he's kind of slow. Occasionally on his cutback lanes. But the acceleration, I definitely have to give this nod to Dedrick Mills. Now, keep in mind, Michael Warren back in college was 10 pounds heavier than Dedrick Mills was. And actually, one thing that Michael Warren could do is actually lose some weight. Not saying that in a bad way, but he could maybe improve from losing some weight, because I think as we go through this, you're going to see that the part of his game I think he's actually very underrated with, and that he does really well. Could he be even better if maybe got a little bit slimmer? And we've seen he's lost 4 pounds since he's been in the NFL. At least that's how they labeled him. So maybe he has lost a little bit more weight to try to get that explosiveness up, be a little bit quicker, because at that next level, guys are fast, and you don't want to be getting caught in the backfield, not on his own rushing schemes. That should never happen. So for him, I think that's the thing. The stop and start is a little slow, and I definitely have to give this edge to Dedrick Mills in terms of acceleration. Now, when you talk top end speed, Michael Warren has more explosive and big runs than Dedrick Mills has. So I can simply take that and say Michael Warren has better top end speed, but I'm still actually going to slightly give this, to Dedrick Mills. Dedrick Mills ran the 4.58 or 4.65 40, however you look at it. We don't have numbers here, Michael Warren. Now, this doesn't matter too much, but neither of them have great top end speed, but I probably would slightly give the advantage here to Dedrick Mills, because I think in a straight line, he would be a little bit faster. Michael Warren doesn't really have that getaway speed, but he has the ability to get away. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has the ability to get out in open space. He just doesn't have great top end speed. Now, this next category, though, is where I think you see Michael Warren start to really separate himself in what he does much better, and why I really like Michael Warren. Michael Warren's elusiveness. Okay, now I know you're thinking, wait, hold up, he's 226, the stop and start is slow. How in the world is he elusive? Well, it's kind of weird. Let me break it down for you. So, elusiveness, shiftiness, my goodness, does he have it for his size. It's actually stunning to see how shifty and how elusive he is for his size at 226. It's not that he's super explosive, but his change of direction is extremely smooth at his size. His balance is so smooth. He doesn't lose a lot of speed changing directions. When he stops and he has to get back up to speed, he's kind of slow there. But once he's already moving, changing directions, flowing from one side to another, change direction is really good. And his elusiveness is good. Let me read some numbers for you just to kind of blow you away here. All right. By PFF. And again, you don't have to take these with anything, but I think it's just a number to throw it out there to compare to others are just showing you clips. PFF gave him a 110 elusive rating when he came out of the draft. Jonathan Taylor had a 104 elusive rating. Okay. Just think about that for a second. That's crazy. At 226, has more ability to kind of make you miss in a phone booth, right? When they say that like in a small quarter spot, because his change of direction is so smooth. He has that shiftiness in his game. It's 76 missed tackles, which I believe was in the top 10 in his final year. I mean, the guy can definitely make you miss. The elusiveness is there. The change of direction is just very smooth considering his size. This isn't to say that Michael Warren's the kind of guy that you want to get it to him on the edge and let him go make plays, because he just ain't that fast. He's not that explosive. That doesn't make any sense. But I'm saying tight quarters between the tackles, he does have some of that make you miss ability, which is pretty impressive. And if he does get to the outside, if he does get to the second level, he can shift. He can change directions, and it's smooth. Now, he won't blow by you, but he can change direction. It's very smooth. A guy like Dedrick Mills, I think, lacks this part, and that's why he plays like he plays. I'm just going to run you over. But he understands it, and it's great to understand who you are, and that's what he does. He's not going to try to bounce to the outside. He's like, hey, I'm just going to run you over. Both these guys, they both struggled against Ohio State. When you watch Michael Warren with Cincinnati, when he played against Ohio State, it was a rough game. And actually, in that game, they decided to go to their other running back, because he was a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, and he had more success because he was able to get to the outside. So my point is that Michael Warren, he's not an outside runner where it's like, hey, let's, block up field and let's toss it to him to the outside. That's not where he's going to find a lot of success. He's still a between the tackles type of runner, but he has to make you miss elusiveness, shiftiness, ability. They're both very similar, and that's why it's tough to kind of separate these guys. But I think Michael Warren in the same situations can make you miss more often than a guy like Dedrick Mills definitely can. I think the numbers also back that up as well. And then you don't need to be extremely creative. You don't need to make a lot of guys miss. In a zone rushing scheme, especially an inside zone rushing scheme, you got to be able to pick the right holes, get upfield, and then just run hard. Right? I mean, that's really what it is. It's exactly what Jamal Williams does. Jamar Jefferson isn't the most creative running back, but his vision is outstanding. Both these guys have good vision, but for the Detroit Lions, where are they going to be? If either of them make the team, they're going to be short yardage, pound it, that type of situation. That's what they're going to do for the Detroit Lions. So they don't need to be extremely creative runners, because this scheme is a lot more heavily reliant upon vision, and being able to hit those holes and get upfield. And that's why I said maybe a guy like Michael Warren could maybe lose a couple more pounds to potentially help him out in that area, because he would still keep a lot of strength. For him, a lot of his strength is in the lower body. What I noticed, however, with Dedrick Mills is that he does occasionally slip. I don't know what it is. Coming out of change of direction from one side to another, he slips, he loses balance. And that's one area where I would definitely say I have to give Michael Warren the advantage, because this guy has slips and Michael Warren is just very clean. He's very smooth as a change direction. The most important part of a running back in a zone rushing scheme a majority of the time with Anthony Lynn is going to be vision. It's extremely important. And do these guys have vision? I would say both of them have very good vision. You start off with Dedrick Mills first, and obviously he started at Georgia Tech, where he was extremely successful. But after his first season, he went for a very big game against Kentucky. After his first season, he said, hey, I want to be better. I want to improve my vision. So he joined this kind of weird program. I'm not exactly sure what it was called, but basically you put on these 3D glasses and things would pop up on the screen. It was basically to train your eyes to be quicker. You would have to follow through a hole. And he said it's something that helped improve through college. And then when he joined Scott Frost with Nebraska, and he introduced, a lot of these option plays out of the spread, inside zone, triple options, so there's a lot of interesting different looks. And that's why he got his opportunity to play kind of like a fullback, sometimes be a lead blocker, because it was a very interesting offense that did a lot of zone rushing schemes, but also mixed in the gap power schemes. And they would pull a lot of offensive linemen, so he would follow his lead blockers there. Overall, he has good vision. And I would say a nice thing about him is that he has a lot of patience. He knows how to follow his blockers. That stuff is great. And he has played in a couple of different schemes. Note, as kind of a knock on his vision, would probably be that he does get slightly hesitant at the line of scrimmage. Some of that is because your offensive line isn't getting a push. That is a problem. That has been a problem. But at the same time, he does tend to get sort of hesitant. But for him, he's going to be, like I said, if he makes a team, a short yardage situation type of running back. Hole quickly is something that he's really worked to improve upon. But then it's about that sheer power just taking over. At Georgia Tech, in 8 situations, needing 1 to 3 yards and third downs, he was 8 for 10 in those situations. And he said this himself. He said, no one is stopping me. It's going to take a gang of guys to bring me down. Look at Michael Warren's vision. This is also really good. Someone gave him a 10 out of 10 in this category. I don't know if I would give him that. Maybe some of that comes down a little bit because he does lack some of that athleticism to hit the hole as quickly as a guy like Dedrick Mills can. Pace runner, he consistently falls forward. I know that doesn't have to do with vision, really, but he falls forward consistently. The entire time at Cincinnati, he demonstrated the good vision, patience, figure out really which hole to pick extremely quickly, and he had to do that because he wasn't extremely explosive, right? He didn't have that great quickness, so he had to pick the holes and decide which way he was going very quickly, those cutback lanes, and he could do it. You could see when defensive linemen or defense players would break through the line, how quickly he could adjust, and then you would see the change of direction, but adjust and be able to work his way upfield. So both these guys have extremely good vision. I would probably slightly give the edge here to Michael Warren, but at the same time, Dedrick Mills is really good at it too. Plus, he's been a part of some different offenses, and I think it's impressive that he's improved upon that throughout his college career. Tackle breaking. Now, tackle breaking is kind of a weird one. I don't know who broke more tackles. I don't know. I can tell you this. I only have Michael Warren stats, but Michael Warren had over 1,000 yards after contact, which is kind of just insane, considering that means he's not getting very far before he's getting hit, which is not good offensive line. I would say both these guys didn't play behind the best offensive lines. At Cincinnati, obviously over 1,000 yards after contact is not good, but also for Dedrick Mills, he was getting hit a lot early in plays, and he just was getting hit in the backfield. So hopefully our good offensive line means that they could be even better with us, but over 1,000 yards after contact, and also the 76 forced missed tackles is not just juking people out, it's also running through guys. Both of them keep their legs turning extremely well. They run through contact. They don't stop. And what you notice with both of them, they're very similar in the way that they're going to wear you down throughout the game. Now, we didn't see this with Dedrick Mills because he wasn't the bell cow like Michael Warren was. But with Michael Warren, there were some instances where it was clear he wore teams down. He played UCLA in 2019. Slow start, didn't do much all game. But then all of a sudden, as the game wore on, he just started breaking runs. And it was like, dang. And you could just tell that defense was gassed. Something as a whole, as a team, the Lions have really missed for years is the ability to wear teams down with the run game and play off of the run game, right? Usually it's been pass the ball. Maybe we'll break a run here or there, but we can't really lean on the run game. That's what the Lions are hoping to do. We've talked about it a lot. And these running backs, they're going to bring more to the table as power runners, which is always nice to have a player like that. You don't need all of your running backs to be like that. Jamal has power, but these guys can wear you down a little bit. And I think that's what the Lions are aiming to do as a team this season, and that's why running backs could be very valuable. I don't know exactly who has more broken tackles. I would say the better competition faced here would have to go to Dedrick Mills playing in the Big Ten compared to the AAC. Neither of them are bad, but the Big Ten is definitely better. Guys, you notice guys have to hit him low. You got to hit him low and you got to wrap up. If you're throwing arms at him, if you're just kind of jumping at their upper body, they're going to keep running. See, Michael Warren, and I would probably argue Dedrick Mills, well, Michael Warren is very built in the lower body. Advanced stands for Mills, but I can tell you that Michael Warren averaged a broken tackle on every fourth play, which is, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of crazy thing. Who's better in short yard situations? It's tough. They both have their numbers, right? I mean, Michael Warren, he was more of a bell cow. The guy had 19 touchdowns, 14 touchdowns. Dedrick Mills had 10 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns. And community college, he had 19 touchdowns. They're both those kind of guys. I would give the edge here to Dedrick Mills in terms of goal line awareness, when to stick the ball out. But those situations, just goal line awareness for me, I would give it to him. How to break the plane, when to stick the ball out. That's awesome. I would also give the edge to Michael Warren in terms of being able to be a little bit more versatile at the goal line. From simply just being, give it to him straight up the gut, you can bounce it a little bit more, and he could potentially make a guy miss getting into the end zone because he sets up defenders extremely well. I mean, he just has that ability. He's got the elusiveness. He sets up defenders. It really was back at Cincinnati, and I think that was my favorite part of his game personally. So I think because that, he may give you a little bit more make you miss ability. Definitely could see one of these guys make the team because I think the Lions would love to have a power back, and that's exactly what these players are. And I think that's why they cut Raheem Boyd. Let's bring in competition for Dedrick Mills and see who wins that power back role. I'm thinking that's what happens, just my prediction. So who do I think wins the versus battle? Well, let's start off with who I think will make the team if one of these two guys make the team. I'd probably have to put my money on Dedrick Mills. And the reason I would have to do that is because I think he adds a lot of just versatility to what I think the Lions would be looking for. And don't forget, the guy was very productive in college, especially at Georgia Tech. I love his story. I think, he's been through a lot. Growing up, Mills actually was a grave digger. I mean, he did that because his family needed the money. I believe him and his brother also did that as well. I mean, Mills definitely understands what it takes and, playing through the adversity and fighting through the adversity because he's been through it. And I think that character is very important. Showed people, and he understands what the team is looking for. And I think his ability to play as a lead blocker, that he's played in a couple of different schemes. He's played for some different offenses, and he's still able to produce at a pretty efficient level. I think that speaks volumes. I think there's more explosiveness to his game, and I think there's some upside as a route runner. I think there's things that are here to prove. He's ready to block right now as a pass blocker, and actually as a run blocker. He can line up like a fullback. Lions would prefer that maybe over Michael Warren. But for Michael Warren's side, I do like watching him play, and I think there's a reason they signed him. They see something in his game that he's like. Multiple teams did last season. They gave him a shot, never got to play in a game, but there's a reason Lions signed him, and they wanted competition. It wasn't like, hey, you guys want it, we're good to go. They wanted competition. You should always add competition. His path leading to the NFL seemed a lot better, you know, the career he had in college and also having a good high school career and not kind of bouncing around like Dedrick Mills did. Michael Warren definitely has a chip on his shoulder. You know, he bounced around throughout the NFL. He's still trying to find a home, and, you know, he understands that what he's got to do to make that happen. And now he's getting another opportunity with the Detroit Lions a year later after not finding a spot. I mean, there's going to be some adversity there, and you better believe he's going to fight through it, right? And he's going to be the kind of guy that wants to find a roster spot. And there are some potential openings here, and I believe that he's going to do everything that he can to make that spot. And I think there's a reason that the Lions signed him because, you know, they believe that he's going to bring legitimate competition. Personally, I think I actually may prefer Michael Warren in this situation, but I really don't think you could go wrong with either one that you keep, and I think the Lions would prefer Dedrick Mills. Let me know in the comment section below who you guys would take and who you think will make the team if one of them do make the team. Let's say one of them hypothetically makes the team. Who do you think it would be? Thank you, Brad, for watching, and I'm out.